Welcome back, guys. So for the past 2 weeks or so, I've been using the Ion Odin 2 Max, and I've been absolutely loving it. I'll keep my words brief before we jump into my full review, but let me just say, this is definitely the most powerful Android device I've ever used, and it's really impressed me. But before we jump into that, let's start with the specs of this thing. So the Odin 2 Max, the model I have right here, uses a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, which was released just last year. So do the other two models. The Base and Pro also use the 8 Gen 2. And you may think, damn, a 1-year-old chip in a $500 device. But let me remind you, the chip that the original Odin used was 4 years old at the time of its release. So shut up and let me answer hypotheticals. Alright. Moving on. So the Max model, again, the one that I'm using, uses an Adreno 740 GPU, has 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage. Now that does change depending on the model you get. The base model has 8 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigabytes of storage, while the Pro has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. There's no way to mix and match those, so just storage and RAM are connected. It has a 6-inch 1080p LCD display, which looks fine on its normal settings, but there is a change you can make in the settings that lets you change the color profile to boosted, which adds a lot more oomph to the color. But whether you want to change it or not is up to you. It uses Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.3. It has an 8,000 mAh battery and runs Android 13. There's one USB-C port on the bottom with a headphone jack right next to it. The joysticks are Hall effect and they are inverted compared to the original Odin's kind of like extruded joysticks, which are similar to the Nintendo Switches and many other joysticks, but I do like this design better. But once again, they are Hall effect, so if they ever drift, it won't happen for a long time. And I'm not even sure you'd play this enough to get it to drift, but if you do, props to you, man. You got your money's worth. The power button sits on top, which also acts as a fingerprint sensor, and the volume buttons lie right next to it. On the opposite side, we have the SD card slot that's hidden under a flap with the mini HDMI port exposed. On the original Odin, the mini HDMI port and the SD card slot were both hidden under the flap, so I guess it's just a little design change that they made. I honestly prefer it because now it's way easier to plug in via mini HDMI, but it doesn't really matter. It retails on their site for $299 for the base, $369 for the Pro, and $459 for the Max, which are all marked as discounts from more expensive prices, and I think that's around what I paid for the Max, but I wouldn't be surprised if these are kept that way for a long time. All of these Chinese companies mark them as like discounts from more expensive just to like make it seem like a better deal, but I wouldn't be surprised if it stays at this for a while. These prices are expensive, especially for the Max. $460 for an Android handheld is a lot of money, but for that price we get incredible performance that I've seen nowhere else. So you have to weigh the pros and cons. I'll get to performance in a second though. Moving on, we have to talk about hardware. And let me tell you, I love the hardware of this thing. They took every complaint people had with the original Odin and the hardware changes that they made with the Loki and combined them to make this amazing device in terms of ergonomics and just its overall design. Comparing it to the original Odin, the ergonomics and everything on here are just better. The grips are bigger, the sticks are bigger and inverted like the Loki sticks. The start and select buttons are in the right spots this time, with the home button moving down and a back button got added. The triggers are bigger, the extra buttons on the back are slightly bigger, but my name isn't engraved on the back, so throw it all away. I'm joking, obviously. I still think it's really cool that I got my name engraved on the original Odin because enough people used my link for the Indiegogo. I don't know anybody else that's gotten that. I haven't heard of anything. I even asked like Retro Breeze on Twitter and he said no, he hadn't. And he didn't know anyone else that did. So I mean, if you did, please tell me, because I don't it would be kind of surprising if I'm the only one that's gotten their name engraved or imprinted. But that's besides the fact. Well then, the hardware is still incredible. Another little downside is that the face buttons don't feel as clicky. It's not a big deal because once I started playing a bunch of games, that like wasn't an issue at all. I kind of forgot that I didn't like them. And it's not even that the original Odin buttons were clicky in the sense. It's more that they just required more pressure to be pushed down. These are a little easier to be pushed down, which kind of takes away from their clickiness, but at the same time, doesn't really matter. I'd say that the Loki feels kind of wide when playing since there isn't much space above or below the screen, especially with how the controls are laid out, whereas the Odin 2 feels more condensed, and there are merits to both and both feel really good. Obviously the wider device makes reaching down for the D-pad and right stick a lot easier, but I haven't had an issue with reaching down for those on this device. It probably has to do with the enlarged grips on the back, but reaching down for them has been kind of natural, and it doesn't feel as cramped as it did on the original Odin. And even after several hours of gaming, using the right stick a lot more than the D-pad, it all feels really good. And with the probably over 10-15 hours of gaming I put into this so far, just with trying out emulators and stuff like that, I haven't had an issue reaching down for the D-pad or right stick at all. It all feels really natural. Moving on to software, y'all, it really isn't that different from the original Odin. Yeah, it's Android 13 versus Android 10, so there's going to be little differences, but overall, it's really not that different. I mean, yeah, there are apps that are going to run on here that won't run on there, but that's just because of the system update. The overall layout they launch with is the exact same for both the Odin launcher and the AOSP launcher, which is just bare bones Android. There have been minor updates, but I feel like those definitely have more to do with the Android update than Ein themselves, but I'll point them out anyway. The notification control center looks a lot better and is more visually appealing, and so is the volume slider. That's it. Well, that's all I noticed at least, but I feel like if that's all I noticed with all this testing, you're not going to notice much more. There are probably little things that come with Android 13 that make the experience a lot better, but I haven't really noticed anything so far. It still feels just as smooth as the original Odins. Do I wish they had a launcher as good as Anbernics or Retroids? Of course. They had 3 device lines. I have 4 of their devices right now, and I've loved all of them. But their 2 Android devices would be so much better if they just made a launcher. It doesn't even have to be a ROM launcher. It can literally just launch my apps. It's like the Odin launcher, but the Odin launcher is not very visually appealing, and it's kind of annoying, so I'd kind of just prefer if they made one better. And no, I'm not using Daijisho. I'd rather use bare bones Android. But besides that, the software experience is fine. They give you a lot of options for customizing the experience, but at the end of the day, it's very similar to the original Odin, so if you use the original Odin and liked the software on there, you're gonna like it on here. I do generally like it better than the original Odin just because it uses Android 13, which is a little different than Android 10, but that has nothing to do with Ein. Maybe if they used a higher refresh rate screen or something that would impress me more, I'd be more impressed, but it's just bare bones Android. And there's not much left for me to talk about. The Android experience is the exact same as it was in the original Odin, aside from the few changes I already mentioned. Take those into account if you're thinking of upgrading, but it's not going to be a make or break moment for you. It's literally just Android. I'm gonna go crazy if they don't shut up. Moving on, it's time for emulation. So, this section used to be pretty inconsequential because Android emulation used to just peak at Wii. So, depending on how powerful your device would be, it would just be how well it can play Nintendo Wii games. But, with the release of Skyline, however long ago that released, which is actually shut down now, or ceased development, I should say, and Yuzu's official Android release being released, Android emulation has gotten a lot more interesting. This being the Max model, it may not be indicative of what you'd get out of the base and Pro models, but I'd say pretty much anything up to GameCube, Wii, and 3DS, you should be perfectly fine playing on any of the models, especially if Ein's own videos are to be believed. Those YouTube videos they posted, they didn't say which models they used, but I assume they're using the base models, and if the base models can play Wii games well, and 3DS games well, and GameCube games well, you should be perfectly fine. Where it gets interesting though is Nintendo Switch emulation, which I want to talk about for a quick second now, because I don't want the ninjas to come after me. So I've never had a device that would put Skyline to its limits. Use it to its absolute limits, because the most powerful device I had was the Odin Pro, and at the time that was one of the most powerful Android gaming handhelds you could get. But times have changed and Skyline has shut down, which, you know, for someone like me who didn't even see much value in it because it didn't play any games besides indie games, I was pretty sad at that announcement. They ceased development due to Nintendo, at the time when they ceased development, issuing a lot of DMCA takedowns. And it made me sad, not because I saw it as this really cool Switch emulator, but because it showed that there was interest in Nintendo Switch emulation on Android, and without Skyline there really was no one running the ship. But then Yuzu stepped in. So one night while I was watching a movie with my family, while I was being forced to watch a movie with my family, I checked my phone and noticed that Retro Game Corps had tweeted about Yuzu getting an official Android release. Now, this was a big deal. because Skyline had shut down, like I said, and there was nothing really going on in terms of anything higher than that, in terms of anything higher than like GameCube and Wii for Nintendo emulation on Android. So seeing that was very exciting. But Yuzu, the official app, does not support anything under Android 11. And if you didn't know, the Odin Pro uses Android 10, like I said earlier, which meant that my most powerful device, the only device that I could get running Switch games, would not be able to install it because the app just wouldn't install on there. I tried everything. I tried downloading it on the Android Pocket 3 Plus and extracting the APK file. Nothing worked, which sucked because I wanted to use it, but I wasn't able to do much. But now I have a device that runs Android 13 that can install the app. And let me tell you, it runs damn well. So the official Android build on the Play Store is probably the best bet to go by. There is an early access version that I paid for, but honestly, I haven't gotten amazing performance out of that one. It's been like just the exact same as the official Android build. Although Yuzu on Android has a GitHub page that gets updated very frequently. So I'd recommend going there and checking in on there like once a week or every once in a while to look for an update. The UI is actually really good for this app. There's no way to set multiple game folders, and if you set it to like a folder that has like subfolders, it's gonna search those subfolders. So now on the Yuzu home screen, I have all of my DLC files shown there. I mean, I could move it out of the directory, but I just don't want to. They're all invalid DLC game files, so it's not a big deal. I wish I could just organize them so all of my games would be at the top and the DLC files would follow, but it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna scroll to them anyway. I have not once used the search function, but you can search through your games, which I can't see being very useful unless you have like a million games. And at that point, why are you using an Android handheld emulator? Get a Windows device. But it reminds me a lot of the Dolphin app, specifically MMJR2, just with how it's set up. And I guess this is kind of the format that a lot of gaming emulators on Android use, which is great because they all work really well. But I think it's just interesting how all of them look pretty similar. It looks really sleek, so there's not much I can really complain about. So, like I said, it's really exciting that this thing can play Switch games, and it's really exciting that Android emulation has even gotten to a place where that's possible, but there's not much more I can really say without actually showing you the gameplay. So let's jump into some emulation testing.
Here we go! Luigi, number one.
Something feels... That was why.
So it's safe to say that this is the most powerful Android handheld I've ever seen, and it's probably one of the most, if not the most, powerful Android handheld made so far. Usually, the time before the conclusion would be used to present any flaws I had found with the device, but I have to be honest, I really haven't found any. This is just the original Odin, but more powerful and with a better design. There isn't anything that sticks out to me as a deal breaker or like really bad. It's all just like there aren't even minor tweaks I can think of that would make me dislike this. The Loki was their first foray into Windows handhelds, which made it really difficult to compare to the original Odin just because they were appealing to two different markets. But this is a lot easier since it is their second Android handheld. And let me tell you, they knocked it out of the park. With all that out of the way, I think it's about time we wrap this up. Ein had a lot to live up to with the Odin 2. The original Odin was so popular and beloved by many people. There were obviously issues, but a lot of people saw it as one of the best value gaming devices, especially for how cheap the Lite model was. And I think they knocked it out of the park. They took what I loved about the Loki, bigger triggers, bigger grips, bigger joysticks, and they applied it to the Odin, which only helped them. Everything about this thing is a big step up from the original Odin and a great compromise from the Loki, because it's running Android. It doesn't need to be as thick or as big as the Loki does, but I also appreciate how thick it is because it makes it more comfortable to hold. Emulation is fantastic, and so is Android gaming, so there's not much I can really complain about. So yeah, if you're looking into getting an Android gaming device, or you want something that gets you into the world of emulation, get an Odin 2. Would I recommend this to someone getting into emulation? Probably. I mean, it depends on what you want to emulate. If you want to emulate like GameCube or Wii, the original Odin Lite is still on their storefront for I think like $200. But for an extra $100, you can get yourself an Odin 2 base, which can play those games better. Would I recommend it for someone looking for a more powerful emulator who maybe has something like the RG405M or something like that? Yeah, definitely. You can emulate pretty much anything on here that the other devices can, but better and at a higher resolution. Ayn continues to knock it out of the park with their devices, and this time I don't even have to complain about a delay. Imagine that. But what do you guys think? Is there something about the Odin 2 that I've missed, or is there a downside I failed to mention? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.